Hello and good evening. On behalf of the University of the West Indies Open Campus, let me just say it's an honor to say to you, the viewers and listeners, a happy and productive new year. Hey, the University of the West Indies Open Campus starts 2014 with a bang. We have with us on your special program, the third Thursday of every month, this being January, three very important persons that I'm going to have a little rapport with and to tell you what they were involved in on Monday and Tuesday of this week. It is something that is beneficial to all of us. We are either employees or employers. Let's take a break for our sponsors, the University of the West Indies.
I'm part of a tough, smart,
constantly evolving,
never too old to learn community of human beings.
proud of country,
Proudly Caribbean, global citizens.
with convenient access to over 400 learning programs
Delivered both online and face-to-face.
from the Caribbean's University of First Choice.
My mind,
My life.
my world of possibilities is wide open.
Call, click, or visit the UWI Open Campus.
Usually we say we have special guests, but I would like to add to that. Let's say we have some extra special guests. And as always, they have to introduce themselves. But we have with us a beautiful lady who is the Chief Personnel Officer, she will say this in her introduction, of the Government of the Commonwealth of Dominica. You know the affinity between the Jamaican populace and Dominica. The terrain is similar, both equally beautiful. I think probably the Jamaican will say we are more beautiful than you are. But we will respond in our local parlance, nous belle Dominique. Okay, so we have with us Dr. Noel Cowell. He'll tell you who he is and what he has enjoyed since arriving on our shores for the first time. And I think, as I said to him, the way he's enjoying himself, I would have to have a word with immigration because we don't give honorary citizenship overnight, but he would like to stay. And, as usual, someone who is a fixture in our program, the director of the Open Campus Countrysides, no one else than you know who. He'll also introduce himself. So, let me start with you. Irma Edwards,
Yes, thank you.
You need to tell the listeners and the viewers who you are.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Let me take the opportunity to extend greetings to the Dominican public and to our listeners. My name is Irma Edwards. I am the Chief Personnel Officer of the Establishment Personnel and Training Department. I participated in this workshop because of my role as part of the government negotiating team with responsibility for collective bargaining agreements with our employee representative bodies.
So there you have the CPO, representative of the major employer in Dominica, that is the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica, and who I would think is the chief negotiator when it comes to bargaining, collective bargaining. But the workshop was dubbed interest-based bargaining. And there is someone who will explain to us with time. I think the hour may be too short, but he engaged a number of participants. Dr. Severin will probably tell you the scope of participants that were involved over 2 days, Monday and Tuesday of this week. Welcome to Dominica, Dr. Noel Cowell.
Thank you very much, sir, and I really feel welcome. It has been great. I'm not going to make any comparisons. Dominica is indeed a beautiful place, and I was discussing with Dr. Severin the close resemblance between Dominica and a part of Jamaica, Portland, perhaps the most beautiful part of Jamaica, many of us would say. So I don't think we're going to have any controversy as far as that is concerned. I am a senior lecturer in employment relations at the Mona School of Business in Jamaica, and my specialization includes industrial relations or employment relations, negotiations, labor laws, and human resource related types of issues. So this workshop essentially was intended to introduce, or in some instances, reintroduce what we call an alternative paradigm, an alternative model of negotiations that we call interest-based bargaining, among other things. It goes by a number of other names. And this is something that applies to collective bargaining, but it also applies much more broadly to other areas of one's life. And we'll talk about that later.
Okay, and that would be the conditions of your working life, not simply, because whenever we hear the term, Dr. Cowell, of collective bargaining, one just think of wages. It doesn't stop there. Francis, yes. Well, listen, we don't have negotiations here and agreements. And as Dr. Cowell said, he's not here for any controversy. And I know if I let you off on the leash, you will talk voluminously about Dominica and its beauty and the Dominica site of University of the West Indies Open Campus. But introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself. This is 2014.
Well, I will introduce myself in the context of this initiative, really. As the director of the Open Campus Countrysides, and the approach to me by the head of the U. Lawson Shearer Trade Union Education Institute, Mr. Danny Roberts, who is a bit of a household name in Dominica now because he has been there several times, to bring this workshop to Dominica. It was held in Jamaica, and we explored, well, which countries can we, mount such a workshop? And I immediately, of course, having some preference for Dominica, as one would imagine, suggested Dominica and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I felt they were at a similar stage of economic and social development and growth, And as a result of that, well, we're here. But I want to say post haste that the biggest sponsor of this is the government of Dominica. The Prime Minister, I approached him through communication letter, and bought into the idea right away. The Cabinet Secretary, and of course, she would not say so herself, but Ms. Irma Edwards has been very, very good in facilitating. Of course, there's the National Bank of Dominica, there's Dominica Social Security, there's the Galway Hotel. All of these have been very good supporters. Irma, if you allow me to call you by the first name.
Sure.
Omitted to say, to give one of the more prominent roles she has played, and I'm being a bit facetious here, of being a former president of the Alumni Association. And I have to say that it's under her watch, which coincided with the 60th anniversary, we have had the most vibrant alumni association. I really must say that publicly, and I thank her for that. And I want to thank you, Noel, for coming here and taking the time off. And we hope that we'll see you one of these days. In our lectures, we will call upon you, of course.
So Noel, you understand why I have to pull the reins?
Of course.
Because
yes.
Francis Severin will go on and tell you, oh my God, he will at the end tell you this is your life.
Yeah. And we don't let anyone get away.
And this is the same for Irma. But I'm coming back to you, Dr. Cowell, and ask of you, can you just highlight what were the major aspects of this workshop?
All right. The workshop, we understood that we would have a group of people who would be coming from a multiplicity of backgrounds. That we had private sector people, public sector people, and we had some trade unionists. We also recognized that there were people who were involved in collective bargaining to a very significant degree. and there were others who were involved in other aspects of negotiations. So that the focus of the workshop was really on that particular paradigm of negotiation we call interest-based bargaining. So we laid the foundation by talking about, by reviewing, for many of us, negotiations in general. Because the truth is, we made the point that everybody negotiates, and people negotiate around a whole range of issues, all aspects of life. Collective bargaining is simply one domain. Negotiation within the domain of work is only one domain of negotiations. And so that we laid that foundation, we talked about the importance of planning. We talked about what we called the default paradigm of negotiations. Most of us instinctively move into a sort of competitive mode. We analyzed that. And then we went into a discussion of the interest-based bargaining paradigm. We followed the particular model known as principled negotiation, and that was the substance essentially. And we did it by means of interactive discussions, but in addition to that, we also did simulation exercises, which are very important for these kinds of this kind of training. So
sort of mimicking what really happens in the workplace.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
But we will still get back to you to ask whose interest is being served, because you stress that the workshop was about interest-based bargaining. Right. And one wants to know, is it the employers, the employees, whose interests are we serving?
It's a very good question.
But to probably put some light on that, let me ask one of the major participants, very busy lady, but found time, which I was so touching, to spend 2 days uninterrupted, shelved everything, and was with the workshop for the entire period. That is Irma Edwards. Irma, what did the workshop mean to you? What did you benefit from it as a participant?
Right. As I mentioned earlier, I am part of the government negotiating team with responsibility for collective bargaining agreements with the Dominica Public Service Union, the Dominica Association of Teachers, and the Dominica Police Welfare Association. And we do negotiations on a triennial basis every 3 years. We have just concluded for 2009-2012, and we are in the process of continuing negotiations for 2012-2015. When you assume a particular position, you are responsible to carry out the duties, but you are not always trained or exposed to all of the duties and the functions that are required. And the collective bargaining process was one area where I had not had any prior exposure per se to the process. And so you come in and you just do what needs to be done, what you think must be done, and in the manner that you think will achieve the best results. And so this workshop was very timely and very important in terms of the knowledge and the skills that we were able to have acquired over those two days. What was more important for me, apart from the knowledge, was the skillful way in which the information was presented.
You are able to smile, Dr. you
may
smile.
Thank you.
Because
thank
I
you
didn't
much.
say it, it came from Irma.
So
there's an endorsement
and I'm
there.
very grateful.
But Irma, you have that kind of guile.
Not all presenters are able to present to an adult audience. And the simulation exercises were very important because it drew out the concepts and the principles, and he used our, let's say, our successes as well as our failures, the areas where we may not have done very well, to highlight the principles and concepts of particularly interest-based bargaining. So, as I said, it was a very timely session, and it made it easy for us to stay there for those 2 days because of the manner in which it was presented.
Okay. Well, Dr. Severin, neither of us attended that workshop. We were there at the opening and at the close.
Yes.
Yes? So we're not good judges, but you heard it from a participant, and a participant in such an influential position, and humbling herself to say that there were aspects of this interest-based bargaining that she wasn't familiar with, and attending that workshop, what it meant to her. And I will ask later Dr. Cowell about the practicality which Irma enjoyed. That is, the assimilation exercises could be like the real thing that happened in the workplace. But Dr. Severin, what I'm coming from is, were you, because we know who were involved, the participants, were you really satisfied with the participants that we attracted? And also, what did we learn from that? Because here it is, this was one of our major outreach programs for 2014, and it may be probably one of the best. The efforts of the University of the West Indies Open Campus. So Director, tell us.
Yes, well, I was interested in a particular point. Well, I was interested in all the points you made, but one hovered over my head and stayed there. Not all presenters can present to an adult group of learners, if you will, and I think Mr. Wilson would say that the area of education is andragogy.
Andragogy.
Right. And that is so important. But it's not only your banal, mundane participants. You really had top-level government and private sector people. I mean, talking about the chief personnel officer, the financial secretary, a number of permanent secretaries, the director of the social security, the president of the public service union,
the secretary,
general secretary,
General Secretary.
And several others of that nature. The manager of the Gary Hotel, who herself was a chief personnel officer, you know,
and the
permanent secretary and so on,
Permanent
you know. So really, it was top notch, and I have to tell secrets out of class. Noel made the point. Noel said in his Jamaican vernacular, "Them bright, you see, them bright, you know." Yeah, he said that. He said that, and
I'll translate that for Dominica. You sava.
Yes. And I was very pleased to hear that, you know, of our technocrats. I don't think people, sometimes the word technocrats doesn't go down well, but in terms of our senior civil servants, you know. And I think what this workshop showed was what was possible with a collaboration between the University of the West Indies and the government, any government in any of the countries, as well as, of course, the private sector and so on. And I think it went down well. And you made the point, Felix, that they're very busy people. And with all these gadgets these days, which can disturb you, you know, having to sign things and so on, having to make sure that things are okay back in the office. Noel was able to sustain them, but they also were committed. And to me, in that sense, they set the example for what their charges and their juniors should do.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Severin. Look, my only disappointment, because I was part and parcel with Dr. Severin and Kimon Joseph in helping to organize this workshop, and it does us very proud at the Dominica site to have this, and Dr. Cowell will ask you for a follow-up. So there's your ticket already booked for Dominica for your return. But just one little disappointment is that I hope, Dr. Severin, that more union persons we had the public service union represented, but beyond that, the DAT, WOW. I know they may have tried to make an effort to be there. I wouldn't say to you it was a costly exercise, but I felt that they should have been there. Even if, as some of them said, they have been through a course like that before. But you had to be there to know if you had done what was done with Dr. Cowell.
I don't know if you mind my saying this, but the truth is that I said that these people were bright, and I didn't expect it to be repeated. I didn't want to be condescending, but these were all highly skilled, highly trained people.
Yes.
Very intuitive. They
Yes.
picked up concepts extremely quickly, and they asked very penetrating questions. I mean, I was very impressed with the quality of people. I was impressed with their staying power. I mean, it's nice of you to say that I was able to sustain them, but the truth is these are really busy people.
Yes.
And they did not have to stay.
Yes.
And I think it is a testimony to their own open-mindedness, the kind of people they are. Because you know, there are lots of things that I don't know about negotiations. There are lots of things that I don't know about interest-based bargaining. We're all still learning.
Yes.
And unless we can bring this humility to our learning process, we're going to remain moribund. So I really enjoyed the experience, to be honest. I thought it was very fruitful.
Yeah, but that is from your part as the facilitator. But you spoke of the practicality of it.
Okay.
I mean, what I saw, many breakout sessions.
Yes.
And just before the meals were served, that is lunch and snack, I would do my own monitoring and evaluating by simply asking the participant, how is it going?
How is it going,
and everybody showed interest.
Going,
so tell us a little more about your methodology, the practical way you got the real life situation in the workplace to come to that workshop.
Right. Yes, the pedagogy. Well, it is really built around the simulation exercises. It is far less focused on lecturing. In fact, when we saw the classroom, your main lecture hall, we immediately moved to a classroom that was more friendly to a situation in which everybody could see
everyone.
The arrangement, which is a circular arrangement where we could all sort of be on equal footing and everybody could be cast as a learner. And we basically had a learning model. The learning model really basically said, look, let me introduce to a little bit of content and a few concepts, and then let us try these out in simulation exercises. And they would take these exercises, prepare, go away, and actually conduct negotiations with their counterparts. And then we would all come back, and then we would reflect on that. And they would give me a sense as to what their impressions were, what insights they picked up and so on, how they felt, what they thought they learned. And out of that, the concepts would emerge. I had the concepts put down in my bag, and I was hoping that they would come up, and in many instances they came up. When they did not come up, I brought them out. And we illustrated it on the basis of the behaviors that they were involved with. So there are lots of ways of doing this, but when you're teaching something with this kind of practical, which is as practical as negotiations, it seems to me that one has to have that kind of active engagement. And that essentially was the approach.
And well, I'm not putting you to the test, but before I ask Irma, the learner, anything, let me just say, could you highlight any one little scenario that you raised and that it fitted into the concept that you had in your bag?
Okay, all right.
If you can recall.
All right.
Well, you should be able to.
Yes, I suppose. There were instances in which one of the messages that we wanted to bring across was the importance of not being distributive and not necessarily being competitive in one's approach. And we use a scenario which is very common, that is used by most negotiating programs, in which the parties negotiated over a scenario which essentially described a major social problem. So what we had were two negotiators. Each was faced with a major social problem. And they needed, and the solution to that social problem, based on the brief that they received, resided in their acquisition of certain items. So they went to the negotiating table with the view that they both needed the items. And what they needed to try to resolve was, how are we going to satisfy our interest, my interest and your interest, given that there are limited resources as far as we can see. So it highlighted the importance of sharing information, building trust, openness, and honesty. Interestingly enough, many of these things are almost intuitively understood by people who are or competent managers of the negotiating process. And even before we used that scenario, I remember the CPO raising that question about the issue of trust. So we were able to bring those ideas out, and the importance of taking the risk of trusting somebody, the importance of being able to establish a strategic alliance with someone even when you don't necessarily trust them, and the mechanisms whereby you can establish the strategic alliance. So that would be one. I suppose there are many.
Well, that is a very good illustration, because I'm thinking here of what you describe, and it seems almost like two groups, or it may be two individuals, building a bridge of rapport.
Absolutely.
At the end.
Yeah.
Dr. Severin will probably use the term win-win.
Yes.
I'm always troubled about that win-win situation.
We discussed that.
If you get your fair share at the end, then we'll be satisfied.
Yes.
Irma, you heard the excellent tutor now for the second time. And what I would ask of you is that what were the learning outcomes from the whole workshop that you attained?
Okay, there were several, and I guess time wouldn't permit me to go into as many of them. But what were important for me, and I think for most of the others, would be a better understanding of the paradigms of negotiation. We learned the various types of negotiation, this distributive, and maybe what some of us know as positional bargaining, where each side takes a position and then makes it much more difficult to move, to come to an agreement. And with positional bargaining, you very often have to end up with some kind of mediation or conciliation process and where you can't reach an agreement, so an agreement is imposed on you. So we understood that better, and then we understood or we learned really the better approach to negotiation would be interest-based bargaining. That's called mutual gain, or integrative bargaining. And in that process, we learned some very, very important points. The need to plan effectively for negotiation, the importance of information sharing, and the importance of communication. And again, those were very practical areas for me, because communication particularly is important, because you can address a number of issues. You may not even need to come to the bargaining table if you can establish that rapport we spoke earlier about, develop strategic alliances with the other party, so you can improve the communication and reduce the time and the effort and the energies that's expended around a negotiation table.
Clearly, it's the learner who learned.
and you feel very proud. Irma, we will continue. But Mr.
Wilson, there's a crucial point I want to make.
Yes.
It relates to the trade unions, and it came up in the meetings. And this whole matter of trust is critical. And sometimes trade unions are faced with a constraint, because the impression is given, their membership feels.
Okay, but it's not wanted to, but you will talk much more of that trust thing, because I think what most Dominicans understand from what Irma and Dr. Noel Cowell has said is that there is the positional thing that you made mention on. We understand that very well. It's take it or leave it. We'll talk a little more about it when we return.
All right, good.
I'm part of a tough, smart,
Constantly evolving,
never too old to learn community of human beings.
proud of country,
Proudly Caribbean, global citizens.
with convenient access to over 400 learning programs
Delivered both online and face-to-face.
from the Caribbean's University of First Choice.
My mind,
My life.
my world of possibilities is wide open.
Call, click, or visit the UWI Open Campus.
Dr. Severin, I think we miss a treat. Probably either you, I, or somebody at the Open Campus should have been part of that workshop. It is for our continuing education of the public, professional development, etc. Just as a little tool, having attended that workshop, I would have benefited as Irma and all the other participants did. But you've heard what the professor, have you reached that stage?
Working on it.
Working on it.
Working on it.
Dr. Cowell has said. But, and he does that with a lot of humility. He was also, as he said, in a learning process too. But what you have heard from both Irma and as a participant and the facilitator, what can you say?
Well,
we missed out on.
Yes, well, I agree with you fully. The word I would use is that it was a tragic omission on our part. I mean, intellectually fatal, really. Yes. And I have to say to you that I did toy with the idea, but the deadlines, you know, the regional deadlines. But what I think ultimately I'm hearing here is that, in a sense, the outcome, or at bottom, everyone will, in a sense, emerge without doing violence to either of the parties. In other words, you made a statement here, the positional or distributive, take it or leave it. It helps no one. It redounds to no one's good. And I think we have to understand that in our organizations, if we as employees do not pull together to help the organization, then in essence, we do not have a job anymore. In other words, it should not be we and them. It should not be an in-group and an out-group. We should be pulling towards the same goal. We should not be acting at cross purposes with each other. Because essentially, you have the employer or the managers or the seniors and so on. But they too must be seen as employees of the organization. You see? And if we think of it in that way, if we philosophize it in that way, then we understand that if the organization rises, then all of us benefit. So that's from a layperson's perspective. And I'm saying that if you take all of this in aggregate, if all of us behave that way throughout our organizations, public and private sector, NGOs, and so on, then
there'll be
the upshot is that you'll have order and you'll have economic growth and economic development in the sense that William Demas conceptualizes it.
Okay. Well, Dr. Severin, I think physicists tell you the world progresses with disorder. But what I need
Karl
to
Marx
ask,
says that
yes,
too.
yes.
Dialectic.
The universe is forever expanding, and eventually it will explode. But we wouldn't be around when that happens.
But we have to think of it though.
Yes,
sustainable development.
Yes.
What we're leaving for our children.
But I need to come to Dr. Cowell and ask. At the start of the program, I asked whose interest is being served when you say interest-based
bargaining. And the short answer is that everybody's interest is being served. One of the cardinal principles, you might say, of interest-based bargaining is that in your planning and in your conceptualization of your negotiation, you think not only about your own interest, what your needs and wants and desires are, but you think as well about the needs and the wants and the desires of the other party. Everybody goes into a negotiation, regardless of what kind of negotiation, with the objective of getting something out of it. So if you're not prepared to ensure or facilitate the other party's access to resources, then the negotiation is not likely to progress very well. And even if you come to an agreement, the agreement is not likely to be sustainable. And so that the whole objective, the whole thinking behind interest-based bargaining, which I have to say, this is something that has been around. I showed in the notes that we had from the ideas. These ideas have been around since the 1930s. They were developed more in the 1960s, and they continued to prevail as
just
really
quickly on
critical
that.
idea.
You say 1930s in whose culture? Is that
In,
1930s in the Western culture?
In Western culture.
Yeah.
In the 1930s in the Western culture.
Could it have been present
It
in
could
the
have
Eastern
been present,
or some
those
other
kind
culture?
it could have been, as
Yes,
a matter
okay.
of fact. And now that you have asked me that question, I'm going to research it.
Yes.
Because it really, the way in which people approach negotiations have a lot to do with your culture.
Yes.
But I would say as well that if say union and management are negotiating, there's also a public interest imperative in all of this. Because when the CPO sits down with the head of the trade union to negotiate a deal, it's coming out of the public purse. The pay, whatever money is being paid to these workers comes out of the public purse. If the workers are not paid adequately, they're not satisfied, it's going to impact on the way in which they function, the way in which they perform, and that is going to have implications for the development of the country. So that what one is really looking at is trying to find creative ways. And also, you mentioned culturally appropriate ways of advancing the negotiation process, employing certain basic principles with the objective of ensuring that the interest of the society and the interest of the parties to the negotiating process are served.
Okay. So I hear undertones of sort of mutual respect and trust.
Mutual trust, yes.
So when, Irma, going forward, when you sit at the negotiating table, should I call it that way?
Yes.
Yes, the negotiating table. What do you figure you learned from this workshop that you can bring to it? Will you now be more positional or less positional? You know, because remember, you're a guardian now of that new knowledge, and if the unions were not present, as I've lamented, then they may not see things in the same way. They may be culturally bound to war.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's a very good question, and one that I have pondered on from Monday, and the continuing from where Dr. Cowell left off with discussion on the interests, knowing the interests of your own party as well of the other party. That point is going to be very important for us as we move forward, because coming out of that, we also learned the term BATNA.
Yes,
So this has nothing to do with batting and cricket.
I know.
But BATNA is the acronym for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. When you understand your own interests and the interests of the other party better, that information enables you now to better plan. And in your planning, you will be coming up not just with what you may want to propose, but you look at a number of alternatives, options. You try to be as creative as you can be. You know the goal and you know the objective that you're trying to achieve. You, through the identification of the interests of the other party, you will get an idea of their own goals and objectives as well. And within the context of interest-based and mutual gain, you then try to come up with what probably your main offer would be, and what are some of the other options that could be considered that you would be willing to offer, and options that may be proposed that would be reasonable to be offered. We discussed as well the practice very often of indicating that you have to go back to principles. And that is very important for both government and the union, because the union's constituents...
Or probably employers.
Okay.
Because they were private sector.
That is true. Employers.
So it's not only government.
It's not only government.
Yes.
So in terms of the employers, may have constituents. If in the public service, it would be the government, the cabinet. An employer, a private sector employer, it may be a board of directors, it may be your partners. For the unions, it would be your members. So very often it appears that reverting to your principles may be a delay tactic. But very often you, as we do know, we have to take information, go back and analyze, and then go back to our principals, and then come back to negotiating table. If we do better planning, and we use the BATNA principle, we will do all of that before. You would come up with all of your options and your alternatives, have those discussed with the principals before, and get an indication of whether they may be likely to be considered, whether they are reasonable. So I think it would save a lot of time, a lot of energy and effort, and delays in the negotiation process. Because for us in government, our negotiations for a triennium can extend for the entire triennium and even beyond, for various reasons. So again, a very important learning point for us is to do better planning, do as much of the research, obtain as much of the information as we can prior to commencing, and as early up in the negotiation process to see how quickly we can close with offers or proposals that will be mutually beneficial to both parties.
Yeah, Dr. Cowell, you sitting there nodding at every point that has been made by Irma. I think there may be a level of satisfaction.
Yes, absolutely.
For,
I can't take credit for everything, but I would love to.
You may not, but at least you initiated. But Francis, quickly, and we're not in any way as representative of the Open Campus going to undo all this useful information that we have gotten, and we're sharing it with you, the viewers and listeners. But Francis, human nature being what it is, okay, I am convinced that Irma left there enriched from what she has said, and there are several others. But there may have been in that room some people who are still skeptical because they will hold to their ground. You as a sociologist, good information shared. What do you say to those who may not have felt the same way as Irma or think the same way, and those who were not there? Because I believe if both unions and employers were there, we would benefit much more. One of the outcomes would be...
I'm going to say a couple of things. Being entrepreneurial, if I should say so, I see an opportunity for building up on this. We cannot leave it here. I mean, I listened to Irma, awestruck, and I'm going to recommend that she is well positioned as the CPO to really, in a sense, let that permeate. Not within the government alone. And another thing that you may not know about Irma is that under her stewardship, a lot of workshops are planned and take place for the public servants. And I commend her for that. I also thank her for asking me to facilitate where I can. But I think that can be brought into the mix. Because we must all know, because if you have those who are negotiating on behalf of, but if the people on whose behalf they're negotiating are not socialized in that, okay? If they do not believe in it, then they may see their representative as not portraying what they feel. They may even, those who are very cynical, may even see their representatives as, quote unquote, to use vernacular, crooking them. Whereas it is bringing everyone's interest on board. In my layperson's understanding, as you all spoke, I jotted down the concept empathetic understanding. Because I see a certain amount of empathy. I see, and you spoke of sociologists, putting oneself in someone else's shoes. I even became biblical about it. I thought of St. Francis of Assisi.
Okay, Francis of Assisi, and Francis the Pope, and Francis Severin.
But Felix, very quickly, what I'm going to say is that we are very open as the Open Campus, in collaboration with Mona, to taking that to its quote-unquote logical conclusion, because the seed has been planted, okay? We have local knowledge on the ground, and I can see where we can now and again bring in Noel to continue that, because we cannot stop right here. We have to continue it.
Okay, thank you, Francis. The thing is that I see Dr. Cowell, sorry, an aspect of train the trainer came out of the workshop. But you'll comment on that, because I'm going to give you the largesse to almost bring this program to an end.
Right.
But I cannot miss the opportunity to inform the public that the Open Campus is very active and well. We're offering professional development courses, 3 of them this semester. You heard Dr. Severin speak about entrepreneurship.
Yes.
That's
one of the courses.
Entrepreneurship, project management, and introduction to counseling. And we would like you to register before Friday, which is tomorrow, and let us help in your development. Doctor,
and it's just $600 for a semester course.
There you are. You brought the money aspect. $600, and we even have a payment plan. You can pay over 3 months period, 222 or any amount thereof. But please register. Don't just call out of interest, but participate. Dr. Cowell, I made mention of this train the trainer aspect. Right. Was that one of your hidden?
Yes. Hidden agendas, you might say.
You see, because I asked Francis about people. Yes, we may have all the tools, but then it's people to communicate.
Absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct in that. That we know that it will not always be possible for you to import people, and it is not desirable either for you to import people. I know that based on the workshop we had, there are some people in there who are highly competent. There are people who have teaching backgrounds. There are people like the CPO who have experience and exposure to planning educational events. And we don't have to come in order to help. You can send us an email. We can do whatever it is. The other point I want to make, which is absolutely critical, the unions need help in terms of explaining to their membership what this new paradigm means. Dr. Severin used the term cooking them. Somebody in the workshop yesterday used the term selling out. It is not selling out. It is not saying that we're going to bargain.
The other term,
we're not
which
bargaining.
I prefer.
We're not bargaining any less hard.
Not selling out, but being in bed with.
Being in bed with, yes. You're not bargaining any less hard. You're bargaining, but you're focusing on the problem here now. And you're trying to work together with the other party to solve that problem. That is what it's about. Exactly.
Yes. That is so very interesting. So, Irma, there is probably room for you to, within the government or the ministries, to have some of you to act as facilitators.
Absolutely.
To bring that knowledge.
And the university will collaborate with.
Because I should tell you, prior to this program, I think last year, we ended with Mr. Thomas Slater and your Mr. Lyndon Williams, who represents
Acting
Labour Commissioner. It was a sort of promo for this workshop which took place. And I should tell you, we will have this program, Dr. Cowell, on YouTube, University of West Indies, or YouTube UE / Dominica. So you'll be able to see, and we'll also send you probably a jump drive or a DVD of this for posterity.
Excellent. Thank you so much, sir.
Let us then take a break for our sponsors. Who else? The University of West Indies.
I'm part of a tough, smart,
Constantly evolving,
never too old to learn community of human beings.
proud of country,
Proudly Caribbean, global citizens.
with convenient access to over 400 learning programs
Delivered both online and face-to-face.
from the Caribbean's University of First Choice.
My mind,
My life.
my world of possibilities is wide open.
Call, click, or visit the UWI Open Campus.
Yeah, so there it is. in the remaining few minutes, time, the program, why don't you, the viewers and listeners, write to Mapping TV? We, the Open Campus, University of West Indies, bringing that to you. Why don't you write and make a statement to Mapping 2K4 that these programs should be not 1 hour, probably 2, probably for the entire day. Because as I meet with many of you, as I travel around Dominica, you always probably recognize me, Dr. Severin, as UWI, the face of UWI, and you also feel that everything we do is very educational. I know some elderly ladies, and they tell you, oh, you on the TV? Boy, that program was good. so I think we are continuing the education and professional development of people by having this program. So write to Mapping. I'm not lobbying here, but write to Mapping. If consensus democratically put forward, then Mapping will reconsider either lowering the cost of we running that program or letting us have leeway to just speak for the entire day.
I'll be brutally frank, it raises the profile of Mapping.
It does. It
you
does.
know, I mean, and this is
they could even sell that to the region, Dr.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Anyway, that's talking about us and UWI. Dr. Cowell, I need from you some recommendations. I mean, you interacted with, as you said, high-level persons in terms of their influence in the Dominican landscape of relationship between employees and employers. What sort of recommendation? Because you got feedback. I think at the end they evaluated not only your delivery, but evaluated the content of the program, the workshop.
Yeah,
yes.
I certainly think that the point that you made earlier and that Dr. Severin and Irma made about continuing education along these lines is absolutely critical. And we are always mindful of resource constraints, and we are always mindful of the university's strategic role in the region. And we are able and willing to help in various ways. We can help from a distance, we can help by being here. And when it is not necessary to be here, we don't have to be. So if you're planning, as in the case of the public service, you're planning programs, training programs, and we can assist in structuring those and point to material that can be used, assisting, supporting the trainers. And I think that out of that room of people, we have several people. I don't think the CPO is necessarily the only one who would be able to continue this work. The other thing which I think is critical, we have to engage the trade unions a little bit more so that the leadership will understand the paradigm, and we have to support them in their efforts, because you see, my experience with trade union leaders across the region is that they're often very much aware of what ought to be done, but often they're driven by the membership who understand things far less, and they're driven to particular types of behaviors because of for strategic reasons. Sometimes because of union competitiveness, sometimes because the membership cannot understand why you would be polite as a union officer to the CPO when there is a grievance between me and the CPO. Yes. So that is something that the union, there needs to be some sort of a public education, and we're starting it now.
Yes.
Which explains to the membership of the trade union that you must support your leadership when they seek to build a positive relationship with the people on the management side or on the government side, because it does not at all mean that they are necessarily undermining your cause. One of the points that emerged out of our discussion yesterday is that it is far easier to give things, to put it basically, to people that you like.
Yes.
If there is positive, what you academics call positive affect, meaning that there is a good and favorable relationship, and there is trust, and there is respect, then it is far easier to make a concession, because you don't feel that you're you know, shooting yourself in the foot. You can trust the other party. And trade unionists, senior trade unionists, do that. We had ones in our seminar. Let us be clear.
Yes.
In this seminar, we had trade unionists.
Yes, yeah.
And we had some good ones. I don't know if they wanted to be made public, but they were there. and they were good. They understand these things. They know that their membership does not necessarily understand it. So that would be, those I think would certainly be two. And I would also say, finally, that the people who were in the seminar must view this as continuing education. We gave them, at the end of the seminar, we gave them some recommended reading materials. And we encourage them to read it, because negotiation is employed in so many different domains of life to solve all kinds of different conflicts. And it is, that kind of skill is just absolutely vital.
Yeah, because I think, Dr. Severin, we will reinforce that. We could hold a similar workshop again, and we'd hope that the same caliber of people come, and even more. Because we wouldn't like, sometimes is the paradigm, that is, I have done that already. I listen to Noel Cowell or some other person, and then I do not need to do that again. A refresher for
but new knowledge.
Yeah,
new knowledge emerges all the time.
All the time.
And new interpretation.
I'm talking about new knowledge. You see again the humility of Noel Cowell is that he's not telling us that he has written several books, I understood. In fact, one union person in the workshop said, look, I have 4 of your books. So I did not know if that meant, well, I have your books, there's no need to listen to you.
No, as a matter of fact.
That's why I was so amused when he said, you academics. I hung on to this one. But I would even go further, Felix. I know presently, and you know, the new dispensation in the open campus country sites, with a deputy director of continuing and professional education. I am looking at the possibility of perhaps putting together a 13-week for credit course, because these days people don't necessarily want to have, especially those who have degrees already, sit too long in 13 weeks to upgrade and know that they get some credit
at the end of the day
for that. You know?
Right.
And so I know that the U. Lawson Scherer Trade Union Education Institute has some course that is in the works now, and that must go to the academic quality assurance. I don't know whether it includes this. I don't think so. But a special program, short program on interest-based bargaining is something that we can look at.
But would it be online or face-to-face?
Face-to-face, I'm thinking.
Well, that is important.
Face-to-face, you know, I'm thinking.
We could work out the paradigm, because it could be face-to-face, it could be online,
it could be blended.
Precisely.
It could be blended.
Could be blended.
So,
as we say,
these are the kinds of things that I
all
think we have
modalities.
All modalities.
All modalities.
I'm excited about the future.
You see the excitement. I know it's bubbling in you too. Because Irma is like myself and Dr. Cohen, you're a UWI graduate, and Francis is a triple UWI graduate or double?
Yes.
Triple.
First degree, master's, and then the PhD. And you are the same?
I'm double. I have 2 from UWI and 1 from the University of Toronto.
Okay. So there you have it, with that caliber of persons on the panel today, having that tete-a-tete discussion on interest-based bargaining. You, the viewers and listeners, I know you've learned a lot. And next time, you may be calling me. In fact, I should say to you, Dr. Cowell, that one of the participants who represented the board of the NBD herself owned a large family business, employing many employees.
300.
300, which made, so you got the
I have
facts.
to learn about my students.
Yes. 300. And said to me, why didn't you invite our company? Because Dr. Severin, our focus was more on employers like the DEF, that is Dominica, representatives. Dominica Employers Federation, DIC, Hotel Association, the unions, governments, and some private sectors like DSS.
That was a tragic omission.
Never mind. We will get it right.
But of course.
We'll get it right.
So,
but as we said, this is just the first.
This is just the start.
And there will be. So this in the closing minutes. You see, the panelists, they don't want to leave. They want to just stay here and entertain as well as inform you. This we say to you, until the third Thursday of the month of February, we will be back. You and me.